I'm not wearing my headband today, so I feel naked. But I'm trying something new. I've got a little ribbon. Can you see the ribbon? Welcome back. I missed you. I hope you're well. I'm doing well. I'm out of lockdown now, which is so good. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dakota. I live in Melbourne, Australia, and I read and write. That's really all there is to it. Basically today, I posted on my Instagram story asking for hyper-specific book recommendation questions. Very specific, like concerningly specific. And you guys delivered. I have done an impossible amount of prepping for this video. I never prep for videos. I just sit in front of the camera and speak. But for this video, I had to go through all the responses and match everything up. I'll insert footage because I did take some. And then I sat down with my books for I think 3 hours trying to just categorize. This was a lot of planning. I even had to take notes. I've got notes on my little torn pieces of paper because chaotic academia, am I right, ladies? If there's a single one of these hyper-specific book recommendation requests that you think would make a good specific video, an entire dedication, let me know because there's a few of these that have like genuinely inspired me to just take and run with. Today for you I have 21 hyper-specific book recommendations. First request that we have is sapphic horror / weird. Boy do I have the recommendation for you. I got a lot of requests for sapphic horror, weird, decay, and this is kind of exactly that criteria. But this is Paradise Rot by Jenny Haval. I've spoken about this multiple times. One of my all-time favorites. It's queer horror contemporary fiction and it follows a female protagonist who moves countries to go to university and she ends up having to board with this other girl. And through very realistic scenarios, a very surrealist scenario unfolds. It's beautiful. It's beautifully written. It's very fast-paced and short and it's gruesome and interesting and just think a lot of bodily fluids, a lot of lesbian action, a lot of straight action too. This is something for everyone in here, I suppose. Recommend very much. A book with a characteristic writing style totally unique to the author. This one was easy. Anything by Irvine Welsh, absolutely anything. I've got Trainspotting here because it's an all-time favorite of mine. If you haven't read it, please do. You've probably seen the film. If you haven't, I hope you have. I hope you do now. It's got a characteristic writing style because it's written in Scottish slang. Very hard to read. I've read classics that have been ranked as advanced in a quarter of the time as I have this book because this really gets your mind going. Because the Scottish slang, like half the words I just genuinely don't understand. Even just opening it now, I'm like, oh, my brain hurts. I don't know how good you can see that or how long it's gonna be on the screen for, but after a tale of destruction and unhinged chaos, there's a really beautiful quote at the end that says, choose life. And I don't know if you've heard of that, but choose life stems from this book and it's the most glorious thing. The next I got is Pretentious in an impress my English teacher way. I love this one. Gives me the opportunity to gush about Dostoevsky. Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. Any literature lover will eat this up. And I'm really hoping that English teachers are literature lovers. It's classic Russian literature and basically a man kills someone because he wants to see what it's like to be above society and morality. And this leads him into this whole cat and mouse chase of avoiding the police and his conscience. Anybody into English literature should have read this book. If you haven't, I urge you, I beg you. The next is To Read in Public as the Hot Mysterious Stranger. This is my favorite. I think I want to make an entire video on this. I recommend none other than a good old collection of Kafka. Franz Kafka. You can't go wrong sitting in a park bench with red lipstick and a coffee. Reading this, anyone who walks past will be enamored. Kafka's the perfect way to almost fake being into literature. Because it's beginner and accessible and entry level. But because he's so highly regarded, especially amongst my university, I suppose, it makes you seem like you're doing better than you are. It's classic literature, mostly surrealist fiction. If you've heard of Metamorphosis, which is perhaps his most famous book, it's about a man that wakes up as a cockroach. Very surrealist, but in a real sense, and so it's very interesting to analyze on a philosophical level. So I recommend that very much for a hot, mysterious stranger. The next book, this was one of the most requested. I think every time I looked down at my phone as I was scrolling, I'd see books for hot sad girls, books for sad girls, hot sad girl Bibles. Why does everyone want to be a hot sad girl? I could not pass up the Hot Sad Girl Bible, The Bell Jar by Plath. It's classic feminist fiction, and it follows an unhinged female protagonist's descent to insanity. It's clever and it's well written, and it's a must read for a hot sad girl. It's a must read for anyone, really. I love that. I love that for Plath, and I love that for us as hot sad girl readers. The next book, the amount of messages that I got that were basically framing me to choose this book, I feel like I've been set up. This is just a big ploy for me to speak about particular books, but the one that I chose for this book is a book with a character that you should hate but still fall in love with. We love a good unlikable protagonist, but how about an entire cult of unlikable characters? The Secret History by Donna Tartt. It's a mystery thriller contemporary book, and it follows some academic elitists who have an unquenchable thirst for more. They attempt to discover this through rituals inspired by their Greek studies, and this all snowballs to them murdering their dear friend. Also, that isn't a spoiler alert because it literally tells you on the first page what happens. It starts off with the murder and then it leads up to how it happened. I love, 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 love this book. All of the characters are morally repugnant, but we love them. And it's universal that anybody who reads this book wishes they could be a part of that. It makes me think that I would happily murder my friend if it meant that I got to hang out with people like that and be in those situations. I love how so many of you associate me with Camilla as well. The amount of messages I get that's like, I pictured you the entire time I was reading this book. That is the best compliment anyone could have in the entire universe. Thank you. The next book is Rich and Pretty Girl Problems that is definitely self-destructive and depressing. I don't think there's any more appropriate book than My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Tessa Moshfegh. It's a contemporary fiction book on a female protagonist who is fed up with her life. So she acquires a year's worth of sleeping medication and intends to sleep off the entire year and wake up anew. I personally am not a fan of this book. It's like everyone's Bible, but I'm not a fan because it's really much ado about nothing. It just feels like nothing happens. I know that's the whole point. I know that's literally the whole point. It's contradictory of me to not like this for the reasons that it's made to be unlikable, but I'm not gonna like it anyway. Don't tell me what to do. I suppose it is good for detailing alternative perspectives of mental illness and addiction, because a lot of the times when those themes are touched on in contemporary fiction, it's the entire basis of the book and it's dark and it's scary and it's sad. This just really factors it in as part of life that you just deal with. It's nothing much. It's interesting. It's an interesting take. The next book, this one was fun. A main character who is neurodivergent. I think that the best response for this is definitely The Queen's Gambit by Walter Tevis. I'm sure you would have seen the series. If not, it's basically contemporary fiction that follows a young girl who grows up in an orphanage, develops an obsession for chess, lets it consume her amongst her addiction to prescription medication that fuels her obsession with chess and whatnot. I love how it's historical as well. It details the 50s and 60s in a way that I haven't read before in a book. It's brilliant and it's intense, and our protagonist, Beth Harmon, is undeniably neurodivergent. The next one, I got a lot of questions like this as well, so I'm trying to choose something from most categories that can broadly summarize a lot, but a book to worsen the hole inside my heart and make me question humanity's existence. Are my followers okay? Do you want to talk about it? The best possible option for that is none other than Choran. I'm so bad at last names.
Pronouncenames.com.
Yeah.
Emil Choran.
Choran.
Emil Choran.
Emil Choran. The Trouble with Being Born. The most beautiful, beautiful's pushing it, most beautifully melancholy collection of writings on philosophy, his take on philosophy, which is very morbid, very nihilistic. He strips down the human condition. He reduces it down to a laughable accident. This book is guaranteed to make anybody spiral, regardless of your philosophical stance or mental health. Read this with a strong headspace. I feel like I'm on a game show. The next category is, drumroll, something that makes you stare at a wall after reading it. Most things make me stare at a wall after reading them, but the thing that's made me stare at a wall the most ever, not as of recent, in my entire existence, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. It's adult contemporary fiction, loaded with trigger warnings, so look this up if you are watching this for recommendations. It follows a 15-year-old girl in a relationship with her teacher and her journey on realizing that it wasn't love, it was abuse. It is one of the most profound things I have ever read in my entire life. It is in my top 3 favorite books of all time. It just puts you in a very particular headspace whilst reading it and after reading it. And I think it makes most people who read it realize a lot of things that they didn't think were true about their own lives. So this is very much a wall-staring book. The next hyper-specific request is the strangest thing you've ever read. Now, Girls Against God by Jenny Havell, the author of Paradise, wrote the first book I showed, one of the first books I showed. Horror, feminist, contemporary, follows a coven of witches in Norway. I don't know how to explain anymore because so much happens. It's so unhinged. Fascinating take on religion. Really explores hate. This is like a contemporary philosophical book that messes with your brain. I don't think I enjoyed reading this. It was too much going on for me. I couldn't even really follow a plot. Okay, the next one is a book that will change the way you view the world. Once again, bringing some deserved light to Dostoevsky. Notes from Underground. This predated his more successful works, follows a nameless protagonist in his search through self-analysis for goodness in the world, any goodness in the world. Spoiler alert, he doesn't find it. It really strips down society and makes you think, this is what we value, this is what we're doing, this is how we're spending our time, and the protagonist is alienated for questioning it. It put me in a headspace after it, thinking about the ways of the world. The next book, a book that feels like a fever dream in the best way. A book that instantly stuck in my head for this is The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez. This book is a collection of magical realism, horror, feminists, etc. themed short stories. Each and every story in here is a fever dream, and that is not something that I can explain without you having read it. It's dazzling, terrifying, hyper descriptive. You feel like you're there. This is a prime example of why I adore Latin American fiction. I think that most Latin American fiction just feels like a fever dream. The next request is a book that would be perfect to read outside a French cafe smoking. If you're going to sit at the front of a French cafe smoking, you should be reading French literature. And of course I'm going to recommend you Albert Camus. Anything by Albert Camus. I'm not going to detail what these books are about because I discussed them both in my previous videos. I love Camus. Gorgeous philosophical fiction. It would be a crime to read anything but classic French literature at the front of a French cafe while smoking a cigarette. The next is a book that feels like Italy. Call Me By Your Name, André Aciman. I chose this because it is the best sensorial, descriptive account of Italy that I have read thus far in my life. Queer romance contemporary fiction that follows two lovers through what feels like a forbidden love through a summer in Italy. A very brief romance that's very weighted. It unfolds in the most beautiful and delicate way, in the most beautiful and delicate setting. The prose in this is stunning. Everything is so sultry and dreamy and hazy. The next book, this was another question that I had incessantly. A book to feel like a feminist, hot, smart male manipulator. I'm going to offer you Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, which I think is the book that everyone's expecting in this topic. But there's no better book in this topic. It's a mystery, thriller, crime, contemporary fiction, and it follows a man who one day finds his wife to be missing, and it looks like he's killed her. And we find that she's staged everything to get away from him, just to teach him a lesson. This book contains the cool girl monologue, which if you're unfamiliar with, I beg you to look up, whether you read it or watch it. The cool girl monologue is iconic because it's a great glimpse into the gender expectations of today's society, whilst it's contemporary and relatable. Great book, excellent book, thriller of the year. Everyone loves Gone Girl. Everyone loves the film, everyone loves the book. This is the prime example of this category. The next category makes me laugh as well because it comes back to that whole desire for a French aesthetic, and it's books that have an old French aesthetic. This makes me laugh, and my response is going to probably let down a lot of people because I'm going to give you quite literally the old French aesthetic. Old Man Gorio by Balzac. It's a peek into France of the 19th century and the classism that was at the root of its very evil. Full of so many rich, well-developed, interesting characters with all contrasting ideals and philosophical ideals. It's an accurate glimpse into the chokehold that classism and status had on Paris of the 19th century. If you didn't have money or status, you didn't have hope. I think that people should stop romanticizing things so quickly, especially points in history, because they see a photo on Pinterest of a French girl smoking a cigarette. The next book is a book with lots of it happening on a train. I genuinely love this book and I've been waiting to talk about it, but I haven't known how yet. The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. It's a mystery thriller, crime, contemporary fiction novel. It's a lot of things I read. Wow. As I make these videos, I really start to recognize my patterns. Whoops. Basically, a woman gets on the train every morning to go to her horrible 9 to 5 in London, and she watches the story unfold through the train window of her ex-husband and his new partner, etc. She sees multiple scenarios unfold, and in her unreliable state due to her own addiction problems and just delusion in general, can't help but interfere. All of the narrators are grossly unreliable. We have an addict, we have a cheat, we have a liar, and it's done in a way where they're recounting their situations, and because they're so unreliable and deluded, the reader starts to coin what's happening before the narrators do. This one I got so much. Lesbian vampire romance. I've spoken about this incessantly because I'm a big fan of Camilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. I don't have to say much to do this book justice. It's classic gothic horror with lesbian vampires. It predated Dracula, it's fast-paced, it's short, it's captivating. The last one, The Last Request, which makes this a grand total of 21, is my book. I am beyond excited to have the opportunity to discuss this very soon. I have a poetry collection in the works that will be released in January, and a novel which depends entirely on how fast I can write it. Definitely follow my Instagram for updates on when these things will be available for pre-order. I often can't help myself when I'm writing, and I'll just post on my social media little stories and sneak peeks because I can't help myself. I just want everyone to see what I'm doing. Anyway, that is 21 hyper-specific requests for recommendations. I hope that fulfilled some kind of void within you. It certainly gave me something to do today. Thank you for being here, always. Thank you for watching. I love you. I am so lucky to have you. Feel free to follow my socials, which I will have linked below, and I will see you when I see you. I have commitment issues, I can't book in a time, sorry.